everybody. I'm Evie Roberts, and this is my podcast, Talking in the Dark. Welcome. The aim of this podcast is to raise awareness about blindness, visual impairment, and disability in general, in a happy and light-hearted way. For those of you that don't know, I am blind. I was born with a condition called bilateral anophthalmia. Try spelling that one. It basically means that when I was born, my eyes didn't develop properly, so I wear prosthetics instead. The goal of this podcast is to remove some of the stigma and stereotypes around disabilities, whilst also having fun at the same time. Each week, I will be interviewing people from all walks of life, including some with hidden or physical disabilities like mine, and getting to know a little bit more about them and the lives they lead.
In this episode, I am very excited to tell you that I will be talking to John Doyle, habilitation specialist for Guide Dogs UK Northwest.
My name is Evie Roberts, and this is my podcast, Talking in the Dark. Welcome. Hi John, how are you doing?
Hi Evie, not too bad. How are you?
Yeah, really, really good, thanks. Well, first of all, thank you very much for doing this. I know this is a little bit weird from how I kind of usually see you, but yeah, super, super excited to talk to you and hear all about kind of Guide Dogs UK and what they do. But before we get into all of that, how's your day been so far?
Not too bad so far. Had a bit of physio on my shoulder because I've got a sore shoulder from probably walking my dog. And then I've been what we call my contribution, which is where I talk with my line manager about my objectives from the past and in the future. So yeah, it's been quite a heavy meeting, but good to be here. So that's how I am.
Nice. Yeah, I mean, sort of zooming in on kind of, I know that you're quite a kind of outdoorsy person. When we were off mic, you were just talking about kind of taking your dog for a walk in the mountains and stuff. I do get the impression that you're kind of quite, you like the outdoors.
Yeah. Oh, it's amazing. It's very good for me. Well-being, just getting out. Yesterday it was so early when I went up the mountain with Edith, who is my dog. And she's a collie, so she loves being off the lead.
Oh.
And yeah, I was the only one up there. It was about 7 in the morning and watched the sunrise. Did a bit of, lots of walking and then a bit of chatting to people on the way back down, which again, I quite like chatting to random people.
That's fair, actually. I kind of agree with you there. I feel like it is nice to just, I don't know, get to know, I guess, and get to talk to people that you wouldn't usually encounter. But that's so nice. Like, that sounds like such a really nice, just like early morning walk, like way to start your day.
Yeah, I'm not saying that I didn't snooze in the afternoon though.
I respect that. Yeah. If you're getting up that early, I feel like that's necessary. Anyways, on to kind of the main topic of this podcast, which is, of course, Guide Dogs UK and the work that they do. So, to begin with, can you tell me a little bit about Guide Dogs UK and what services they provide?
I will try my best. So, in terms of guide dogs, I bet most people will know it's about dogs, but that really relates to adult services, which again, they don't just offer guide dogs in terms of that. They're a place where you can listen or talk. They offer advice and support. There's lots of adult support in terms of offering cane skills, technology advice, sighted guide training, and life skills. Again, just preparing people for maybe a guide dog journey, but also preparing people perhaps not for that. I work with children and families, so the children's service does mobility, orientation and life skills, which we know as habilitation. There's specialist technology for out of school use, sensory bundles, Um, there are buddy dogs, which is for age 4+. There are customized books, which is a service where you can get at the cost price of a usual book, but you can get it adapted for text, size, etc. And what they've just done, what I think is brilliant, is they're offering it to now family members who have got vision impairment so that they can read stories to their kids, which I just think is amazing because um, what child doesn't want their mum or dad to be reading a book? They do family experience events, education support as well, and then My Time to Play, which is part of habilitation as well for 0 to 4s. So lots of services. Um, Obviously, there's more information if you want it on the website.
Yeah, definitely. Very, very varied then by the sounds of it. And we're going to kind of focus in on a few of those different aspects later. But I think what I would first of all kind of zoom in on is I think what you mentioned very early on in that, which is I think that kind of maybe misconception that it is just about the guide dog and that
Yeah,
process of getting a guide dog that you guys kind of provide. And I feel like that is kind of quite a common misconception because obviously there's so much more to it. But I think when people think of visual impairment, guide dog is kind of the first thing that comes to mind.
yeah. Well, I get that every time I turn up at a school. The
Yeah.
usual office administrator goes, "Oh, where's your dog?" It's like, no, I work with children.
Yeah, not
Um,
quite.
and it got me thinking because actually, when I was in the Isle of Man one time, I was given an accessible room because they thought I was turning up with my guide dog
Oh,
when I came
really?
to stay, and it made me chuckle the other day when I was telling that to my friend. So yeah, lots of misconceptions. We do a lot more than just guide dogs.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, it's definitely one I've come across as well. I know that when I've told people I've been working with Guide Dogs UK, or I know a few of my teachers, when they've been notified, will ask me in my next lesson, "Have you got a guide dog?" I'm like, "Not quite, not quite." Yeah, definitely a bit of a kind of common misconception surrounding the charity and what you guys do. But focusing more on you, then, can you tell me a bit about your role and what it entails?
So I'm a qualified habilitation specialist, which means I work with children up to the age of 25, so 0 to 25s if needed. Usually or typically, I would see children and young people up to the age of 18, I suppose. Um, what else can I tell you? I'm also a mentor to other colleagues as well, who are starting on their career, we call it an early career pathway. So I'm there for that. I'm also Northwest rep for a professional body that's called HabVI UK, which is designed for habilitation specialists, um, setting the professional standards for the role, and trying to increase its visibility as well within the UK.
Wow, so again, kind of fairly varied then by the sounds of it. Focusing in then on that kind of mental role, I can imagine that that obviously, coming from someone who has been through all of the kind of, qualifications and got to the position you are in now, I can imagine that mentoring people who are going through the same or similar pathways is quite a nice thing to be a part of.
Yeah, I well, I like helping people.
Mm.
I feel I've got technical expertise, but also life experience in various forms, um, that allow me to enjoy talking with people, setting targets, I suppose, um, solving problems together. Because again, it's not just about me; it's about helping someone also think about their direction or what they need solving. Um, so yeah, it's really great, especially when they do then achieve something that you've been working on together. Um, yeah, lots of celebrations.
Definitely. I feel like that is actually really special because it almost feels a bit like a kind of shared celebration, I would imagine, because you've been a part of like almost watching and helping them achieve whatever it is that they have.
Yeah, I think without it sounding too cheesy, is I'm in the background. So
Mm.
it's them doing it, um, putting in the work. So yeah, but it is good to be there celebrating with them once it's achieved. So
Yeah, definitely. I can absolutely imagine. So from kind of you going to a mentor, let's flash back to kind of how you got into this. So how did you begin working with the charity and what made you want to choose that position?
so I know you're aware, but I was a teacher,
Hmm.
um, a deputy head down in Bristol for 20 years, and we were moving. So it was a chance for me to just reevaluate what I wanted to do. Um, I have an amazing ex-colleague, now friend, who I used to work with when I was teaching, called Kim Cordy, who is an amazing HAP specialist. And I saw an advert on her Facebook page that she'd reposted. So it was like, oh, that's interesting. But knowing that she is in Bristol, it was kind of like, oh, well, that's a shame because I won't be in Bristol. Had a brief chat with her where she then said, yes, but they are actually all over the country. So I saw the advert, thought it sounded amazing. I must be honest, I'd never heard of the role, so I hadn't really thought about what a HAB specialist does. But I applied, and then I had to apply for university because it's a graduate diploma that you train for, which takes a couple of years. Um, so lots of application. Um, then um, in my first year, you get to shadow, so you get to watch a professional do the role. And then you're also learning the theory and the practical behind everything. Some amazing tutors at UCL that we did have. Um, And then after the first year, you are qualified as a habilitation assistant, which means you can do um, training plans under the direction of a HAB specialist. It also means that you can't technically teach long cane, but you can do other aspects of the role, and again under the direction of a HAB specialist. So the second year is about learning cane, and how to apply that into training. Um, and yeah, that was how many years ago was that? Oh, 5 years ago coming up. So I've been qualified for 3 years, which also then you have a kind of what they call a probationary year where you're showing that you've got the skills and the expertise, um, keeping a logbook of training. Um, Again, for HabVI UK, which is the professional body, you keep a logbook of training, and there's a certain amount of hours that you need to do. So that's what keeps rolling on each year. Um, I think that's where I am and how I got here.
Nice. Yeah, because I was actually going to kind of focus in on the kind of qualifications side of it a little bit because, I think by the sounds of it, quite an intense kind of training period. But I think that that does show how sort of specialist
Hmm.
the role is and how much training has to actually go into it.
Yeah, it's there's a couple of places in the UK that offer the training, um, but it's quite intense. Um, There's a lot of theory, so it's not just about the practical side. There's a lot about child development. There's a lot about how we use our senses in the environments. Um, there's various kind of opportunities to see lived experience as well. So get lots of viewpoints from parents and young people. Um, yeah,
Yeah, I can definitely imagine it being quite intense and that kind of lived experience part of it that you mentioned there. I can imagine sort of that being quite impactful because you're actually getting to interact with the people who kind of and the families who require these kind of services and get kind of an insight into how they feel. I can imagine that being quite impactful.
yeah, at all different stages of a journey as well. Um, so you've got, well, do I go into that much detail? But you, you have some parents or children who are right at the beginning of their sight loss journey, and you've got some children and young people and families who are quite a long way down their path, refining the skills for independence. So yeah, it can be tough, um, but again, it's about listening, viewpoints, taking it all on board. So yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. And I mean, obviously we kind of know each other from, like you say, you coming over to the Isle of Man. And obviously I've worked with you and I know you from the habilitation training that you provide. But could you kind of explain to people what habilitation actually entails for blind children?
Yep. I like to say that I do the fluffy stuff, which doesn't sound, maybe sounds a bit too fluffy, but basically I work alongside a qualified teacher for vision impairment, who do the academic side. So it's my role really to do the non-academic, which is thinking about mobility, how the body moves, orientation, so navigating how people get around, and also independent living skills. Um, I teach those at home, in public, and also at school. So again, it's working closely with education. Um, my main role, or what I think, is I need to increase the independence and confidence for any young person that I'm working with. I'm trying to minimize risk and maximize safety at all times. I can't get rid of risk, but I can try and minimize it by teaching different techniques, strategies, skills. Um, it's it starts with a referral. So usually a child will come to me. Um, the first thing that I will do is I assess their habilitation. Um, so I'm undertaking lots of different tasks or sessions where I'm trying to understand what that child or young person needs next. Um, I then think about the recommendations. It could be that they need mobility aid training. It could be that they need body awareness or motor skill development, and kind of increasing their awareness of their senses, their other senses. It can be things like pre-cane skills, so we call that trailing or maybe sighted guide. Um, I do a lot of navigating outdoor environments. So I'm working with the young people to on designated routes. Um, one potentially that they would like to do, but also I'll risk assess and maybe offer an alternative route if it's safer or if it's um, uh, more visible. We do public transport training. Um, Independent living skills, which we say is ILS, but it's things like personal hygiene we can talk about. We focus on eating skills or personal organization, food prep. Lots of how I see it is preparing for the next stage of their life. So lots of preparing for adulthood because we do want a lot of independence. We want the confidence to be built. Um, One thing I suppose that we always do think about all the way through is social and well-being, social and emotional well-being, thinking a lot about friendships and socializing. Um, and I think the only thing that I have forgotten really is that it is a specialist curriculum. Um, and with that, there is a curriculum framework that's been devised that sets out various roles or various curricula that a young person with vision impairment would need. By the time I think by the time they reach adulthood, you want this to be taught. You want them to have the skills to be successful. Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. I think that's very much it. And I think I was going to kind of mention how that kind of specialist curriculum, because it will be sort of so different for every child who requires it, and what they need and what it is that kind of needs focusing on for them, really.
Yeah, I think guide dogs are very good at saying it's person centered. Um, and the ideal is that hab assessment right at the beginning really details everything that you really want to focus on and current skills, because a lot of the children that I work with do have skill set already. They may have taught themselves different strategies as well. So it's offering them better ways of doing something or adapting and working with what they're bringing as well. Um, and yeah, really taking it individualized and personal to them and their families. So it's um, one thing, child voice or young person's voice is really important right the way through um, to guide kind of the training plans that we put in place.
Yeah, absolutely. I can definitely imagine, because obviously, it is their kind of, it is their life, and it's what goals they want to kind of work towards depending on what they want to do, either, later in their, like, maybe teenage years or even in their adult life, really.
Yeah. And also they might not know yet. So sometimes I'm guiding a bit like a mentor,
Yeah.
guiding to kind of suggestions as to what you might like. And that the CFVI, which is the curriculum framework, is really good at promoting a discussion because it has a list of kind of an expectation about what you might want um, by the end of your education, I suppose. And so it does guide very good discussions. Um, and some children say not yet, and some children say yes, please. um, so yeah, it's all good.
Yeah, absolutely. And I do just kind of want to lock in on those two words you said quite a few times, independence and confidence, because I feel like that's what it really kind of boils down to, I think. And I feel like they kind of come hand in hand in a way. Through it, you learn the skills that give you the opportunity to be more independent and know that you can do the things that you've kind of wanted to. And I feel like through that, you're then kind of naturally more confident, you trust yourself more. And I think that really shows how important it actually is.
Yeah, and that's I suppose one of the perks of my job is to spot that potential and also use sessions to put that little bit of risk in to give things a try, um, to let it go wrong. If it goes wrong, it can do, but again, it's a learning opportunity. Um, but yeah, definitely independence and confidence. It's how we want our adults to be, and so that is my job to get you there.
Yeah, absolutely. Um, and I feel like, and I kind of know some people may assume that these tasks could be, taught by parents or things like that. And I know why I believe that they should be taught by a kind of external party. But can you explain why this is so important?
I'll try. So I think, a partnership with parents is really important. But like you said, that kind of skill base, the skills, the strategies, the techniques that I'm teaching are so specialized. I mean, the long cane does come with its guidance of it should be hab specialist or mobility specialist that teaches that, because we're doing it in a sequence, we're doing it in an ordered way, in a safe way. Um, I think uh, the other side to that partnership are the vision support, um, because um, they are also part of that training plan. If I'm not there, I'm expecting people to be practicing and consolidating the skills that I've taught. So yeah, definitely a partnership, but balanced very carefully with guidance from myself. If it's not me necessarily doing it at that point in time, we've talked through, we've um, discussed different options, different things that could work. Um, and I think what the reason it needs to be a specialist in the first instance is because it's that consistency. So, for example, if it's not me being your or a hab specialist and one of my colleagues takes over the role, you want that training to be consistent and standardized. You want things done so that the smooth transition from one person to another, that the young person at the heart of it knows that whatever they're doing, it will be the same. It will be at that standard. Does that make sense?
Yeah, no, that makes perfect sense. Yeah, absolutely. I think that really kind of sums it up is that kind of keyword of consistency. And I think that's so important when you're learning skills like that are going to be so important to your life now and in the future. And even, even things like if it is kind of parents or teachers trying to teach those skills without the help of a habilitation specialist, even if it's multiple people trying to teach them, everyone, if they aren't specialized in that training, might have slightly different ways of doing it, which is going to make it really inconsistent for whoever's kind of learning it.
Yeah, definitely. And yeah, it's got to be about the person learning the skills. It's got to be that young person that takes it all through. So yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. That makes total sense. Um, Now, I know that one of the areas that we are working a lot on at the minute is mobility training. And can you sort of explain the importance of mobility slash cane training and some of the benefits that that holds specifically?
Yep. Again, I'll try. Um, so we focus on mobility orientation um, right from the beginning. So as soon as we can work with the child, so zero to 25, um, I think it's got to be a centered approach on that child. For me and for lots of my colleagues, it is linked to child development, but also linked to individual need. So we know that children learn at different rates, or they might need something different at a different stage of their life. So it's very much based on what the child can do and what their next steps are going to be. Um, we're using lots of sensory information to build up that awareness of the environment that they're going to be in, whether that's home, school, or public. Um, for me, because I'm an early years trained teacher, so child development is really important. So body awareness is a real key skill. So that what can my body do? Um, Lots of very young children aren't able to realize what their body can do without some formal training, some formal sessions. Not necessarily formal because that's the wrong word, because you wouldn't be formal with a 1 year old, I suppose. But um, you're trying to build up that awareness of the environment. Oh, it's kind of exploring. That's my foot. Oh, my foot can reach out. My foot can touch something, or um, we have a lovely thing called a resonance board where you can feel the vibrations through your body. It's basically a plank of, I say basically, there's nothing basic about it, um, but it's a wooden platform that the child is on, and you're creating sounds. The vibrations come through their body, or um, loads of different things for that. Um, in terms of what you're trying to get, even before cane training, because I think cane training, not everybody will want a cane at that point in time, but you're trying to think, are they able to hold it? Are they able to manipulate the cane? So lots of motor skills at the early years, but also are they emotionally ready for a long cane? A long cane or any cane is a symbol that denotes you have a vision impairment or sight loss. So it's about how the response from the public in those situations. Are they motivated to use the cane? Is a key factor. Um, and I must say that's the difference between teaching and being a HAB specialist, where I'm thinking about this role. All of the kids, I think, are motivated to learn, whereas in teaching, not necessarily.
Yeah.
Um, but that awareness of the other senses, how you can use your hearing or how you can feel something as you're walking along, just gives that extra dimension. Um, I've made a few notes, but just the types of cane. I said not everybody wants a long cane, so I've introduced symbol canes, which are like the name suggests, it's a symbol. We use it particularly at zebra crossings because it just gives traffic. I say just, it doesn't sometimes, but it gives an awareness to those drivers that this child needs extra time to make a decision as to when it's safe to cross. But also thinking about using it in shops because again, it gives you extra time just to make sure you've got the correct change. Is your change then going back into your wallet or your purse before you leave the shop? So again, thinking about safety. We've got guide canes, we've got adapted mobility devices, um, which are not a cane as such. How to explain those? Um, they're like a barrier for the child to use that they push in front of them. Long cane, though, gives that sensory information as the child's walking along. It's giving information about the ground ahead. Are there any changes in level? Because if your cane drops, your cane tip drops, that's a sure sign that you are about to be in danger because something has occurred. And also to detect obstacles. So as we're walking along the street, occasionally I will let my young person use their cane to find something, whether it's intentional or whether it's not. Again, it's just giving children and young people that chance to explore the environment. Um, I've mentioned I've mentioned tips on the cane. You can get different tips. Um, but again, you're wanting them to scan, so go side to side as you're walking along again to give that information before you get to it. Again, maximum protection for the CYP. Um, and posture and gait. Um, we talk a lot about how our bodies move through space at any point. So we're constantly observing, is posture good? Is the gait okay? Because it can lead to things like veering, which means we move to one side, or so we're potentially going to be missing our next point of reference, our next landmark or cue that we're trying to get to. Loads of benefits. I hope that's all right.
Yeah, that's literally perfect. And that is probably I could not have explained it nearly as well as you did. So yeah, that is it's perfect and I think sums it up brilliantly. And I think that I'm actually really glad you kind of mentioned the whether a child is emotionally ready to use a cane actually. And I think that's a really interesting point because I think there is something very, I don't know really what the word is, but it kind of, because it is such an obvious symbol in a lot of cases, I think there is something quite, you know, it can be quite hard hitting about the reactions that you might get from other people when you have a cane. And I think that emotional, like, whether you're emotionally ready to actually take that next step and use a cane is really important because it can feel quite, I think you can feel like you stand out quite a lot, definitely, when you have a cane. I know that's something that I experienced when I was a lot younger, um, because it is such an obvious symbol.
hmm And I think, yes, um, sometimes the perception of public is that they see the cane and think, and then, they can talk to me if as the HAB specialist as opposed to the young person that I'm working with. And actually, why are they doing that? It's very strange. Oh, I find it strange. I can kind of
Yeah.
understand it, but it's not acceptable. Um, but even, I've worked with quite a few young people that aren't ready for the cane yet. And I always use the word yet because that gets me round quite a few barriers. Um, I'm working with at least two CYPs that I can now think of off the top of my head where we're practicing cane skills, but they aren't ready. They're not emotionally ready to use that cane out in public. There's a lot of peer pressure. Um, and then they're not wanting to use it yet. But I am preparing them for that day when actually they might think, oh, no, I am ready to use it. It might be an unfamiliar environment um, where they need to navigate. And so they've got that extra tool. It's another tool for their box, I suppose. Um,
Definitely,
and I
yeah.
was just thinking, actually, sometimes it's parents also who aren't quite ready. because they're coming to terms with sight loss. Um, and so again, it's doing things very slowly, making sure that you are taking all viewpoints on board at the same time, but being really respectful of that.
Definitely. I mean, I think it's like we said quite a few times, like so different for everyone. Everyone's going to feel slightly different emotions
Yeah,
about it. Some people are going to be more ready than others. Some people it's going to take them a bit longer. And I think, yeah, it really just circles back to I think what we keep saying of lived experiences and kind of how different it is going to be for everyone, depending on what their thoughts and what their viewpoint might be on all of it. Um, And I think kind of the other thing I would say with it is I think, like you say, there are so many benefits to it. But I think from my personal experience, I think one of the real benefits is I think, like we said earlier, that kind of independence. Like when you finally get to that point where you can walk a route confidently, whether that be in school, like a lot of mine are, or whether that be
yeah,
out in public, or whatever that might be for you. There's such a good feeling when you can actually walk a route and be like, yeah, I've got this. I can use my cane. I know what's in front of me. I know how to problem solve if there are any obstacles that might be there. It's very freeing, I would say.
good. That's really good to hear.
Yeah, it's definitely. I think it's quite a long process, but yeah, definitely a really great feeling once you finally crack something like that. Um, but I know from kind of personal experience again that there are often kind of misconceptions around blindness and assumptions are made that I will eventually get a guide dog. And I know that this is, first of all, a process, quite a long process, but also ultimately a choice. So could you explain a little more about this kind of thing?
Yeah, well, I can say straight away, a guide dog is a mobility aid. It's not for everybody. Um, that may be down to personal choice. It may be related to vision. Some people have um, different degrees of sight loss, so they may be using their vision too much, and that would affect the dog because their vision might affect how they are walking along the street. They may take that decision from the dog who's got this. They know the dog knows what it wants to do, but at the same time, the person then may use their vision in a way that's not compatible for the dog. Um, but there's lots of other things to think about: home circumstance, um, general health, your current mobility needs. It may be that I've definitely got, again, another CYP who is adamant they're not going to be having a guide dog because they've got long cane, and that's what he wants. Um, and yeah, he sees his freedom, his independence with long cane. Um, but obviously there's lifestyle. There's lots of changes, particularly universities or colleges, schools to think about. Um, you'll need to know different routes. You need to know 3 routes. It's working the dog 5 days a week, at least 40 minutes. They've got to be meaningful and sufficient that the dog is maintaining their skills that they've been taught. Um, Again, there's thinking about dog welfare and responsibilities. Are, you know, the guide dog owner will be doing everything to support that dog. So feeding, grooming, making sure it goes to vets, making sure that when it spends, you're picking it up, all of those types of things. And I think there if a guide dog isn't right for that person, there are alternatives. I know one of the later questions, Evie, sorry, is about technology, but technology is going to be um, getting better, and perhaps, that's part of the consideration now. Um, yeah,
Yeah, absolutely. You have given me the perfect segue into my next question, so thank you for that. But I am
sorry.
gonna hold, no, it made my life easier. I'm gonna hold that back for a second though,
Yeah,
because um I think, yeah, I want to kind of zoom in. And obviously, you mentioned there about the 3 routes that are required when you are actually kind of going through that process of getting a guide dog. Because I think that another very, I don't know, I would say misconception maybe is, I don't think people kind of really realize how actually kind of long and how detailed the process is of if you actually want to get a guide dog, how you kind of go about that. And obviously, yeah, there's kind of learning those 3 routes that you need. There's obviously kind of actually, yeah, I guess sort of could you kind of explain that process and how you would actually go about getting a guide dog if that is something that a young person wanted to do?
I again can try. I
Yeah,
don't do guide dog applications very often, because obviously I work with young people and
yeah,
children. It's quite rare. It's not uncommon, but it's still quite rare. Um, so there are various stages of conversations, I suppose, is the start off. We want to pose the question, is the guide dog right for you? And at that point, I would direct people towards the website because there's a very thorough, it sets out the process, it sets out any questions, it sets out loads of different information about the process. Um, so definitely go for the website in the first instance. You would then, um, we have a wonderful service called Guideline, which is where you would inquire about that service first of all. Um, so it's that first. I suppose you want to be knowing that if you are going for a guide dog, that you have routes, that you've worked on your habilitation to begin, to have the skills necessary to be independent travel. Um, there are various I suppose you would call them assessments. We have lots of questions about how you use your vision. If you have some sight, if you don't have any, have you got certain routes that you are using? We're thinking, or just getting the people to think again about the dog's welfare. Are they going to have space to exercise freely? Um, Different things like that. Does that answer the question? I feel like I've not quite
yeah,
answered it.
yeah. It does definitely. I think what I was just trying to highlight is how sort of maybe complicated and detailed that process is rather than
Yeah,
something that is all kind of smooth sailing, which I think a lot of people who haven't experienced that may assume was kind of what I was aiming for.
and I think the best place to do that would be to find out more. I'm not necessarily the best person to ask about it, um, but I do have colleagues that are really knowledgeable about the process, and I think um, at the moment there is quite a lengthy waiting list. Um, it can be 2 to 3 years, I think, is what the waiting list is now. And well, officially, I think you want to be ready to train, which means you have all of the things in place, um, because the dog is matched to you under different criteria, and it could be that you have a dog sooner, or it could be that this dog comes along later. But yeah, you need to be ready to then do the training with the guide dog.
Yeah, absolutely, definitely. I am gonna take that perfect segue that you gave me a few minutes ago now, and we are gonna move on to technology because obviously, like you said, loads of progress in technology has been made over the years, and I think will continue to be made. But as this progress has kind of been made, what kind of technology solutions are you seeing come into the market?
Well, I suppose the biggest is mobile phones, um, and accessibility apps. Um, we we can there are certain ages where you can have apps. So some of the apps that I might be talking about, I don't necessarily work with younger children with them, but things like Seeing AI, which can help. It can look at coins, it can look at money, it can describe a person in front of you, it can detect color. Um, There are apps like Be My Eyes, which is a service that you can ring and ask somebody at the end of the phone line whatever you're needing at that point in time. It could be that you're in a supermarket, it could be that you're at home and you're not sure where something is in the cupboard. So things like that. Mobile phones are brilliant. Lots of accessibility options, and I think we have a really good technology guy. I won't drop his name in, but he's brilliant. Um, well, I will do. He's called Tommy, and he um, gives us lots of information about new things coming onto the market. So there's Meta glasses, which you may have heard about, which have the built-in camera, the microphone, the AI assistant, um, that can connect you to apps. It can give you descriptions of where you are at a certain time. It can read text, which I only found that out yesterday. I will, I did a bit of prep. But it could read your mail. It could read instructions for for a recipe, which I think is just amazing. But
Yeah.
having said that, you can't use them in wet weather. There you go. You can only use them in dry weather.
Right.
So with all technology, there's always something that you kind of think, oh, it's not quite there yet. Um, but what I find fascinating is there's a something called Glidance, which is um, it's a mobility and navigation device which uses AI. Um, and it works in a way that you can pre-program routes or you can use it in unfamiliar environments, but um, it'll avoid obstacles or it will take you to certain places. Things like it recognizes doors and it recognizes stairs. Um, but it's yeah, very interesting. So those are the kind of the things that I'm working with. I don't tend to use those with the children yet, but possibly mobile phones, particularly with teenagers, even just changing font size or changing the background color to make it slightly more accessible for the young person is kind of where I'm seeing it day to day.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think it is really great actually how like just how many, whether it's an app, whether it's an actual product, whether it's an AI assistant, just how much development that we can actually see in tech and
Mm,
tech design to help people. I think in our kind of like in the era that we're in now, it's really great how many steps are actually being made because it's it is just making things more accessible for people.
yeah, definitely. And also, I can't remember what technology it is, but lots of the technology that's now mainstream that lots of people now use was specifically designed for disabilities and making things more accessible, um, which I find fascinating. But one thing I didn't mention was the bone conducting earphones. Those are great because you can use those with apps and then also still hear what's going on around you. So yeah.
Yeah, I can say from experience they are actually great. They are one thing that I do have and use on a daily basis because I think that is like you just said, it's the ability to know what's going on around you, so you're not worried about like accidentally missing something. But also, use it with whatever app or whatever you end up. I use them in school quite a lot, but whatever it could be out and about, whatever it is that you're trying to do as well. Those are definitely great. But a bit of a kind of 180 now from tech to, I would say, sort of feelings. So my next question for you is, what do you love about your job?
Lots of different things. It was really hard to pinpoint this because um, I was trying to think about it. It's I without be well, am I being humble? I don't know, but it's just my job. I love doing it. I love every aspect of it. But so I was trying to think the variety of skills that I'm teaching throughout the week um, can be so varied. So it's not the same each time. Um, Also, the conversations that you have with young people and children can be quite insightful. And I like that part of the role, um, building a relationship, and talking about what the child or the young person what they want, and then making it happen. That's what I love.
Yeah, absolutely. I think that makes total sense. And I think, yeah, I can definitely understand that. I think it must be a really, really cool job to be a part of. Um, and my kind of final question for you then is actually one that I ask all my guests, and it is definitely one of my favourites to ask. But for you, what has been your proudest moment so far whilst working with Guide Dogs UK?
So, graduating again from when I became qualified as a HAB specialist, that was definitely one of the proudest moments. Because I'm so old now that I can't remember the first time I graduated. But really, again, it was really tricky to think about it. But I've kind of thought writing an end of training review. So I write reports when we've done the training or partway through the training, and it's always good time for me to reflect on not only my teaching but also the strengths and the skills that I've taught, and what the young person can then do that they couldn't do before. So again, it's that kind of impact of, gosh, I've done that, or we've done that. Not I've done that, but through my teaching, we've managed to do this, and it's brilliant. That's again, yeah, proudest every time that happens. It's a proud feeling.
Oh, I really love that. That is, yeah, really great, and I can definitely imagine that. But thank you so much for coming on the podcast. It's been so lovely to talk to you, and I think it is so important to talk about Guide Dogs UK and the work that you guys do, and for people to kind of learn about that. So yeah, thank you so much for doing this.
Well, thank you for the invite.
You're very welcome. Um, and thank you so much to my audience for listening, and I will see you all next time.